and welcome to another episode of SaaS Showdown. I'm Colin McCarthy, and this is my partner in SaaS.
Hi, everybody. I'm Rose Layton.
And today we're going to be talking about SaaSOps platforms. So obviously for the last couple of episodes, we've been talking about SaaS management in general, going through all of the different parts that make up SaaS management as a whole. But today we are going to be targeting and talking about some of the specific platforms that you can use to manage your SaaS operations. SaaSOps, and where these platforms started from.
Let's roll it back a little bit, Colin.
Yes, start from the beginning.
Before you ever get to a SaaS operations platform, you start in the admin console.
Yes, and then for most of us, that would have just been the Google Apps for Business admin console. If anybody is old enough to remember how limited and clunky I
can't even imagine. Well, and so, on the Microsoft side, they have their own admin console as well. I would consider it maybe not so limited, but much more clunky.
Yes, but if we go back, when I go back, I'm thinking to like 2010. So that was before Office 365 and Azure was around almost. And it would have been the people who are working on the Microsoft side would have just been using users and computers in Active Directory. That's what they would have been doing.
Right. Yeah. So the idea of the admin console has transformed over time, obviously. It didn't really exist prior to SaaS. The idea of a universal admin dashboard and set of settings that you could log into anywhere in the world at any time and manage your stuff.
Yeah, manage your different users, your estate. One of the best things I think about certainly if we're talking about the Google admin panel was the ability to have admin roles. I do believe admin roles were there from the start, so you didn't have to have everybody as a super admin. Obviously, everybody lives by the mantra of least privilege. If you don't,
they do.
Yeah, if you don't, then you're walking on a very narrow and wobbly tightrope. You should never give people more permissions than they need.
Colin, what would you say is your least favorite thing about admin consoles?
The Google.
I'm sure there's a
few. Back when all we had was the Google admin panel, it would time you out and log you out like every 15 minutes. And if you were working, if your whole day was spent, answering requests, add people to groups, creating new accounts, doing other functions inside the admin panel, you would have to log into it repeatedly. So that was a very, I could understand the security side, but it was also, so that was annoying. And then the other thing on some of these admin panels, and we will talk more than just the Google admin panel, other programs that were out there at the time, was the inability to do multiple actions at the same time. So if anybody's used the Google admin panel back in its original form, if you had a new starter join and they wanted to be added to 10 groups, you would have to find all of those 10 groups, go individually into that group, and then add them as a member, which was very, very time consuming if you had one person start. If you had 5 or 10 people start in a week, that was a very, very manual and repetitive task.
It's like hours of clicking.
Yes. Yeah. And things would get, overlooked. There'd be mistakes. Onboarding process wasn't very good. And then also if you ended up having multiple applications, you'd have multiple admin panels with, multiple clicks. So that's the least thing. That's the thing I least liked about it. How about yourself?
Well, I have to say the thing I least like about admin panels, not just in the past, but today also, is a lack of good reporting. This doesn't necessarily apply to Google as much because they've definitely expanded their reporting offerings, but there are so many admin consoles out there that offer either no reporting at all or very little, or sometimes even just useless reporting. Like, I don't know if you've ever gone into the Google admin console and just looked at like the apps usage data. I mean, it's cool to know, but it isn't very useful. And so it's one of those ways in which, like, I think sometimes these apps, and like I said, this is still going on today all over the place, is they will put together some reporting on the metrics that they have, but then they don't do anything useful with that data, or they sometimes do things that are just actively unuseful with that data. So yeah, I think reporting is probably one of my biggest pet peeves.
Right. Yeah. And obviously I'm just thinking, the times that I've gone into an audit log is to check on actions that were done. Certainly if something has gone wrong, and something has happened to an account or an action has been done on an account, and you're trying to work out, which one of your support agents had done it or what mistake you might have made. That's, the admin panel the auditing reporting can be very useful for that. For sure. And also, I guess, the development or the limitation of a single application's, own proprietary admin panel comes when you have a large support team. If there's only you and 20 users and the business is quite static, then, just working in a single admin panel or a couple of admin panels is manageable. But if you're, a team of 10 or 15, 20, however many support people you have, and you have a couple of hundred or a couple of thousand users, then the rise of these platforms or a better way to use the admin panel really, comes into its own. And obviously the rise of these expanding SaaSOps management platform vendors all came from the expansion and the development of our favorite acronym, the API.
That's true. Yeah. I mean, without the API, there's a lot about the SaaS ecosystem that isn't possible, right? Integrations are all API, either public or private. But then also, like, I think a sign of maturity is introducing APIs that are used for administration. And that's mostly what we're talking about today.
Yes. Yeah. The administration.
I would say maybe the biggest or maybe the most advanced version of an API interface for a SaaS tool is probably GAM.
Yes.
I think it's got to be one of the biggest ones that I know of.
Yeah. And I think that's probably where everybody was first introduced to another way of administering your Google apps.
Yeah.
Your Google Apps for Business, your G Suite, your Google Workspace accounts through GAM. For the
uninitiated, GAM stands for Google Apps Manager. It was created by...
just about to ask.
Yeah. Who made it?
Jay Lee, I believe.
J.O. Lee.
J.O. Lee.
Yeah, J.O. Lee on GitHub.
Yes.
He wrote the original GAM, and then there's also a couple of other versions of GAM out there. The one that seasoned admins use is called GAM Advanced Extended 3.
Would you class yourself as one of those seasoned admins?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. So, I definitely would.
Excellent. Well, I'm glad you're an expert because I have a confession. I am not really a GAM user.
What?
Yes.
I didn't know that about you, Colin.
It's a deep dark secret, but I
know.
I am a GAM noob.
We'll reveal why you're a GAM noob here soon, because you've had alternatives in your career for quite some time. But so GAM Advanced Extended 3 is a fork of GAM written and managed by Ross Scroggs. Or maybe we have those. I think we have those the other way around. I think Ross wrote the original GAM and J.O. Lee wrote the advanced. Either way, they're a dynamic duo of people.
Yeah.
Who wrote one of the probably the most used SaaS admin interfaces out there that I know of today. And that is mostly because it's open source and it's free and people like free stuff. So, so I want to say though, just, so we're not fully endorsing this. GAM is very dangerous if you don't know how to use it. The API credentials that it uses and the API scopes that it uses for the permissions to be able to do everything that it can do are very, very broad. And when you use GAM, you're basically handing the keys to the kingdom over to whatever client you're hosting it on, whether that's your desktop or if you're hosting it in, like I use mine in Google Cloud Shell.
Mm-hmm.
So wherever you have it installed, just be aware that unless you know how to adjust your API scope permissions. So I cannot fully endorse it without people doing their own research.
Right. And obviously and it's not a graphical program, is it?
It is a command line interface. Yes. So for your command line interfacers, it's definitely, your PowerShell folks or whatever. It's a lot more familiar to them. It was not very familiar to me. I'm a UI person. I'm definitely a GUI girl through and through. But I learned how to use GAM because it could solve a problem for me that nothing else could at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I've since used it. Where GAM really shines is managing large amounts of data. So, I mean, we're talking thousands and tens of thousands of users. GAM has a lot of controls and functions to help you manage data at scale and manage user updates at scale and user changes at scale and onboarding and offboarding. And you can script with GAM too. So there's a lot of flexibility in it if you know what you're doing. But for the rest of us mere mortals, right? Learning to use a CLI tool when you're not very familiar with CLI and learning to use it to the best of your ability are a little bit difficult sometimes. And so they take a long time and they're not very friendly. So what do we have instead, Colin?
So obviously GAM was just making use of APIs, and if the APIs were there, other companies were able to utilize those APIs and make a more advanced graphical user interface, a nice GUI for us more simple folk like myself who are a little bit adverse to tinkering with the command line, more at home with a GUI to utilize those programs.
And if it seems like a weird thing to have a third party writing an admin console for an app that already has an admin console,
yes,
welcome to the world of SaaS.
Yeah. And it's great that Google did provide those APIs and spend, I guess, time doing other things as opposed to building out their admin panel to be as full featured as we needed it to be many years ago. But the first SaaS Pro or Google management program I used was gPanel from a company called Primevo.com. Mm-hmm. They're a Google Apps reseller. We used them. We moved to them in 2011, and we got their gPanel, and we're able to utilize that to do repetitive tasks. Have add people to groups at the same time, push out email signatures to end users, be able to have visibility into Google Drive files. That's the one thing that you still can't do in the admin panel. In Google's own admin panel, you don't have any visibility to see files and make any changes to them. That's why you can do that in GAM. But, if you don't want to be playing around with file permissions in GAM, you can go into gPanel that we used for a long time and you can find the file, based on the user, and you can do your actions, share, change the sharing permissions and everything. And, that was a very vital action that we needed to do, throughout our support role.
Yeah. And they had similar ones for Office 365 when it first came out as well. I mean, I don't mean in the past tense, like they still have those. Google and Office 365, I think, tend to be the ones that encourage their own wholly separate management platforms. And these companies make plenty of money doing it, which shows, I think, that Google and Microsoft have a long way to go in their own admin panel.
Yeah, I think it's a great ecosystem that they foster and encourage, because not only, it allows them to not focus on the business side or the business administration side of the admin panel, and it gives it to these other companies that can specialize. Then those companies can also specialize in other things, and a lot of them are consultants, resellers. Obviously, Primevo and G-Powno, I think, was one of the first. There's another reseller that has their own admin panel called CloudM. And then there's another reseller that works with Patronum. And as another admin panel out there to do those email signatures, access to Google Drive files, bulk management of groups.
And if you Google Microsoft 365 management, you will find all the Microsoft ones. Obviously, Colin and I are Google people. So
yes, yeah. I know AvePoint is one of the big Microsoft ones that I know is in use at our parent company.
Well, and more, we are starting to see sort of the next evolution of SaaS management platforms, which is where you're not managing just one app anymore, right? Because what's the point of just managing Google if I also have to manage Slack and Zoom and StylePad and, or RingCentral or what have you. Right. Atlassian. If you also have to manage, your Okta, your JumpCloud, so all your identity providers, all your core business applications, and then moving into, your common standard business applications. So, your marketing apps, HubSpots and Salesforce, Marcom Tech is like a whole other thing. Your HR systems, your finance systems, all of this stuff, right? If all of these are SaaS applications and they all have their own admin panels, it can be really time consuming, especially if you're a small shop, to learn all of these systems, because each admin panel is basically its own language sometimes. And then, to learn all these systems and then also to manage them at scale. So like if you're in a growing company that's onboarding, 30 people a month, or God forbid, you're, doing more than that. Like you said, Colin, in the beginning, right? If you have 5 people that you need to onboard in one day and you've got to make, 10 add each of them to 10 groups, that's just one app, right? And that's not even like creating the user. That's not even like provisioning their hardware. So if you're a small shop, this stuff gets really overwhelming really fast, and things start to slip through the cracks.
That's why automation is the real buzzword, and automation is hitting every part of business, and it's certainly very important in SaaSOps and the management of these platforms. And obviously, in what you've described, and for those informed, educated listeners that know about the marketplace, there's one company that's a big player in this that we haven't mentioned so far,
and that's BetterCloud.
Yes, BetterCloud. BetterCloud.com started off as just doing Google Apps for Business support, very much like Primevo.
Flash Panel, I believe.
Flash Panel. It's still there, but it's.
Yeah. And then over time, their customers ask them, hey, it's great that I can manage Google doing all these things, but I really like to manage more stuff. Like I have all these other apps too. And I think, 2017, the new Better Cloud was announced. With integrations to, I think, 7 or 8 different apps. Dropbox. I know Dialpad was an early one. Zendesk was an early one. Microsoft was. They weren't fully fleshed out yet, but they were in there.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Because obviously, there's one important thing that limits some of the ability of these platforms, and they're all. Technically, all the platforms are on operating on a level playing field, because they're all reliant on the actual software companies' APIs. So Microsoft,
they rely on the SaaS.
The Microsoft API wasn't very good, because before app.bettercloud, so there was g.bettercloud, which did your Google administration platform, but there was also I can't remember if it was o.bettercloud or m.bettercloud for Microsoft or Office 365. I think it might have been O, but there was a very simple.
Only have one or the other. Yeah.
There was a very simple admin panel to manage your Office 365 accounts. And obviously the development of that stopped. And as you say, quite rightly, it developed into app.bettercloud and a platform where you could connect in through integrations, just using the API that's available to everybody. To provide functions. And the best thing is that there's constant development, and it's very exciting. If you're inside that application, you either get an email notification, or you see, this app needs to be re-authenticated because there are new, API to call, and that platform is able to bring in more data or perform more actions, which makes life so much simpler. And easier. Simpler.
Yeah. And all of these platforms, I think, have in common one sort of underlying thread, that the only reason you really need to connect to multiple apps is to automate actions together.
Yes.
Right? So all of them have some form of automation or workflows, or what do they call them? Like, there's so many things.
I think
so much terminology for different stuff.
I think the industry has sort of stuck on workflows, because I've heard it in a couple of different companies now.
That's true. But so I mean, the whole idea though is, when this thing happens, sometimes there's an if statement, if such and such is true or false, right? And then here's the bunch of things I want to do. And so we're seeing this not just like in SaaS management platforms, but we're seeing the same thing in like sales and marketing apps and engineering tools and things like that have the ability to just say when, if, then.
Yeah. An example, and I know we'll go into this in more detail in upcoming episodes, but something very simple would be, just so that everybody can understand what we're talking about, say when a user is created, if the location says the office is in New York, add them to the New York mailing list.
Right.
Or
easy peasy.
Or when a user is created, if their title says sales, add them to the sales Slack channel.
Right.
And then
and all of that just saves a lot of time, right? So instead of having a checklist of, a dozen to 100 items to do when you're onboarding a single person, you basically write these workflows.
Mm-hmm.
Colin, let's talk about the state of the operations platform market segment. So we obviously, both of us are near and dear to Better Cloud, because we've been customers for a while. This is not necessarily an endorsement of Better Cloud. They are not paying us to say this, but there are starting to be more players in this space. What do you think? What do you think is going to happen here?
That is a good question, because the SMP marketplace, SaaSOps management platforms, or SaaS management platforms, obviously SaaSOps is, so it's SaaS management platforms, and SaaSOps is the what we do to manage them. I'm very excited, because I think initially a lot of some of these, certainly initially, their architecture was built around a single function of managing Google Workspace, for example, or Office 365. I think now for some of the new players into the market, they know that they've got to build their platform to do multi-SaaS. So they might pick one SaaS application as their starting point, but their underlying architecture and how they're thinking about how they develop their own code, it's to easily scale and bring in the connectors for other applications, whether it is, Zoom or Slack or Salesforce or ServiceNow or Freshservice or anything else. And obviously, Freshservice has come into the SaaS management marketplace with some of their own automation. So they've got an existing cloud platform. It's a great ITSM. IT service management platform. They know that their customers that have got that need the ability to have spend and discovery management and to do some tasks. Automate. They have an automator which allows you to do automated tasks based on a certain condition. I think the marketplace is going to expand. The development will be hopefully rather rapid, and the other the other nice thing I think as well is it's not only the SaaS management platforms are building themselves correctly as they expand and come onto the market, but also new SaaS applications know for them to succeed they've got to have a good API. Because one of their selling points will be, you can connect into Better Cloud. So, we utilize Druva for our backup. They had an API before we bought them. It's like, it's great, you've got an API. We want to automate this in Better Cloud, and Better Cloud and Druva work together, and they built an integration. So if when all of our accounts are created, they're automatically added to the backup program.
Well, and even for large enterprises who might build their own kind of automation systems themselves, right? Using Ansible, SaltStack, any of those, you can, as long as the SaaS applications that you're using have an API and have an API that's useful, that's a key point there. It has to be an API that's useful. You can automate anything that you need to have done and then fit that into your existing sort of workflow system.
Yeah. And then also you can have your reporting go to wherever you want to go. So if you want to have a Slack message every time a user account is created, or somebody, has a failed login, or an account is suspended because somebody has left, you can get that to go into a Slack channel or any other. Or
you can create tickets when that stuff happens too, right? So I think we have automations that do all three: email, Slack, and tickets. Just because, we just have different approaches to how we handle different problems. And so, I think we could spend a whole episode talking about the power of automation, but
so, and I think that hopefully that should come up next time on SaaS Showdown.
Okay. So real quick, wrap it up, Colin.
I wanted to ask you the same question. Where did you think SMPs were going to go?
Well, I thought the field would be bigger by now. I've been using Better Cloud, the new version of Better Cloud, app.Better Cloud for 4 years almost. And most of the challenges we've seen in this space have come from existing players. So the Freshservice one that you talked about, or they've come from what we talked about last time, the spend and discovery tools. So those guys have tried their hand at automation. The thing that I think is limiting for a lot of these companies is that either they're pigeonholing themselves into these ecosystems, right? They're either all Google or all Microsoft, and you really can't because, hello, I have both, you have both, everybody has both pretty much. So either I think they're pigeonholing themselves into these ecosystems, or I think they're trying to tack on something extra, right? So the spend discovery guys are really working on like the finance integrations and the spend and licensing pieces. Or Fresh Service, they are an ITSM, an IT service management platform. And that has its own challenges, right? Asset management, service management, those have their own things. And so I'm not sure that it's the right approach for them to kind of expand out into this multi-integration, multi-app space when they've already got this kind of big, I guess, product, right? That they have to update and support and maintain anyway. I don't know. We'll see. So far, I don't think anybody has it at 100%.
No.
And some of that is because the APIs themselves are not regulated. They're not, consistent, or like sometimes they're just like straight up crazy, right? And these companies are changing them all the time. Like Zoom changes their APIs, I think every quarter almost. And so, so I think when we see more consistency in the SaaS industry, I think we'll see more consistency in the SaaS platform and just in market segment.
Right. Yes. And it'll be interesting to see what these companies do to differentiate themselves from the other platforms and make them the platform that you choose.
Right.
Yeah.
Do it right or don't do it at all.
No. Well, Rose, it has been another great 30 minutes-ish chatting about SaaS and SaaSOps. Thank you for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And thank you, everybody, for listening to SaaS Showdown. We will catch you next time.
Bye.
Produced by the Tab Geeks Network. Enjoy all of our shows on YouTube at youtube.com/tabgeeks. Join our exclusive, free, no sponsors allowed Slack community and sign up for our newsletter at tabgeeks.com.